The orchard behind our house was a place of refuge. Rows of apple trees stretched as far as the eye could see, their branches heavy with fruit each autumn. As a child, I spent countless hours there, climbing trees, picking apples, and daydreaming in the shade. The orchard was a world unto itself, a sanctuary from the outside world. But one fall, when I was 17, that sanctuary revealed a secret that would change me forever. It was a particularly fruitful year, the trees burdened with more apples than we could possibly harvest. My parents had hired extra hands to help, and the orchard buzzed with activity. Among the workers was a man named Henry, quiet, polite, but with a strange intensity in his eyes that I couldn't quite place. He kept to himself, working diligently, but something about him unsettled me. One afternoon, as I was hauling baskets of apples to the barn, I noticed Henry standing alone at the edge of the orchard, staring into the woods that bordered our property. His posture was rigid, his gaze fixed on something I couldn't see. I approached him, curious, and asked if he was okay. He turned to me with a start, his face pale, and muttered something about needing to leave. Before I could ask anything more, he hurried off, disappearing into the trees. That night, I couldn't shake the image of Henry's pale face and haunted eyes. I told my mother about it, but she brushed it off, saying he was probably just tired from the long days of work. Still, something gnawed at me, a feeling that there was more to Henry's strange behavior. The next day, Henry didn't show up for work. My father sent one of the other workers to check on him, but he returned alone, saying Henry's cabin was empty, his belongings untouched. It was as if he had vanished without a trace. The mood in the orchard shifted after that. The workers whispered among themselves, casting uneasy glances at the woods. My father, a pragmatic man, said it was nothing to worry about. People came and went all the time. But I knew something was wrong. That evening I decided to go to Henry's cabin myself. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the orchard as I made my way through the trees. The cabin was a small, weathered building at the far edge of our property, half hidden by overgrown bushes. The door creaked open when I pushed it, revealing a dimly lit interior. It was sparsely furnished. A bed, a table, a chair. But everything was meticulously arranged, as if Henry had been preparing to leave. On the table I found a small notebook, its pages filled with neat, precise handwriting. The entries were strange, almost incoherent at times, filled with references to shadows and voices that Henry claimed were following him. He wrote about seeing figures at the edge of the orchard, about hearing whispers in the night. The last entry was dated the day before he disappeared. It read, "They've found me. I must return to the place where it all began." Beneath the words was a crudely drawn map leading deep into the woods. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized what it meant. Henry had gone into the woods, to a place he believed would hold answers, or maybe an end to whatever had been haunting him. Against my better judgment, I decided to follow the map. I had to know what he had been so afraid of. The woods were dense, the trees growing closer together as I followed the path marked on the map. The light faded quickly, and soon I was navigating by the glow of my flashlight. The deeper I went, the more oppressive the air became, thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. After what felt like hours, I reached a clearing. In the center stood an old crumbling stone structure, an altar overgrown with moss and vines. It looked ancient, out of place in the middle of the forest. The ground around it was littered with bones, small animals mostly, but here and there I saw something larger, almost human. My heart pounded in my chest as I stepped closer, drawn by a strange compulsion. On the altar lay a single apple, its skin unnaturally red, almost glowing in the dim light. There was something wrong about it, something that made my stomach churn. As I reached out to touch it, a cold wind whipped through the clearing, and I heard a voice, low and guttural, speaking in a language I didn't understand. I froze, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. The voice grew louder, more insistent, and the ground beneath my feet began to tremble. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the roots that snaked through the soil. The apple on the altar started to rot before my eyes, its skin shriveling, turning black. A shadowy figure began to take shape behind the altar, tall and indistinct, its eyes burning with an otherworldly light. Fear gripped me, and I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush, desperate to escape. The whispers followed me, echoing through the trees, urging me to return. But I didn't stop until I was back in the orchard, gasping for breath. The trees there seemed to welcome me back, their branches swaying gently in the breeze, as if reassuring me that I was safe, for now. I never spoke of what I saw in the woods. When my father asked about Henry's notebook, I lied and said I found nothing. The workers continued the harvest, but the shadow of that place lingered in the back of my mind, a constant reminder that some secrets are best left buried. Years passed, and I eventually took over the farm. The orchard flourished, but I never ventured into the woods again. I didn't need to. I could feel its presence every time I walked among the apple trees, a dark stain on the edge of my world. The altar, the apple, the shadowy figure, they were always there, lurking just beyond the boundary of the orchard, waiting for the day when someone else would be foolish enough to seek them out. And when the wind blew through the trees at night, I sometimes heard the whispers again calling to me from the shadows.